Alright. I feel inclined to make this video at the moment because I've been wanting to talk about this topic in depth for a while now. I've talked about it on some levels in other videos, but not in this aspect. The way I've been discussing it with people online right now. And I want to make this video mostly because I want to talk about it in an actual intellectual fashion, and not in basically a mudslinging, attacking type of debate or argument, because that's basically what it is. So the topic is abuse. Now, I'll start off with a story of myself and how I came to realize what that word actually means and how far it can go. Because I'll say that I didn't think I was abused at a certain point in my life. When I was about, I'm 32 now. It was about in 2013, 2012, 2013. So that was, yeah, 8 years ago. So about when I was 24 or so is when I first realized, that I was abused. And I had all kinds of different revelations about who I was and why I was the way I was. And anyway, so the revelation came to me through an acting class that I would go to. I had this acting instructor. His name is Paul Curry. He's an amazing man. He has an amazing family. And he basically, he has an organization in Australia where he helps, well, I don't know if he still has it now, but he had one where he's helped, numerous numbers of Australian children who have been the victims of abuse, of all kinds. And he's helped them overcome those so that they can learn to find peace and happiness in their life, at least enough to the point where they can, go on functioning and living well-rounded lives. And so in this acting class, basically what he would do was get us to open up to our internal childhood traumas that we all had locked within us, that we had no idea about, because they were just so, covered with, basically, they're just covered with thoughts of how could I say it? They're just so buried down deep within us that we forget they're there, and we don't think about them, and we just push them aside because that's what we've been taught and trained to do. And he would help us to expose those by, finding the right environment, or putting us in the right environment, and allowing us to feel safe enough to discuss these things and to go down as deep as we can, so we could express those traumas and release them. Because his whole method was basically to release those blockages within us that didn't allow us to be free and fully able to express ourselves, so we could be better actors, pretty much. Because if you have certain blockages within your mind where you're like not exactly sure, or you're not as confident then it's, your performance isn't as great. So basically that was his method. So during this time is when I realized, like, wow, I didn't know. And I even had a little disagreement with him at one point when I was explaining to him what, things I went through. Like, oh, my parents, they didn't really, I wasn't abused. Because to me, abuse always meant, like, you were left with bruises, and, you were beaten, knocked unconscious. You're really physically hurting. Like, that was abuse to me. I didn't consider, being called stupid, or being called, annoying, or being called whatever. Like, words basically to me weren't abusive. I didn't see it as that. And when I was explaining to him, he was like, oh, no, you were abused. And I was like, no, I wasn't. And he was like, no, yeah, you were so confident. And I was just like, what? Like, is he serious? Like, at first I really didn't think so. I was like, okay, well, you think that, that's fine, but I disagree. And then once we got more into the sessions where I was opening up about certain experiences that I had and how they made me feel, and I started crying, because the thing is, when you're that in an environment like that, where you're that safe and you feel that, you feel that free to express what you've been holding inside, you let it out. Like, it just comes out fully, and you start crying. And I wasn't the only person in that room that, cried when talking about that stuff. A lot of people, broke down. Grown, strong, tough men were breaking down too. And they didn't even, they were surprised by their reactions as well. They didn't know that they were so hurt, and, that they were so damaged. And they became better actors the more that I went to class, and the more sessions we had, the more people opened up, the better their performances got. And it was just an amazing experience to see that, and so I came to this whole new realization about abuse and what it is, and the world, and how it's so embedded into our society, as a way of life, that we don't even think twice about it. When you call your child stupid or annoying, or you tell them to shut up, or you're yelling and telling them, you're getting on my nerves, or even stuff like, oh, you look like your dad. Like, the tones, the way you say it to them, all of it affects them. And it's very subtle. It's on a very, subconscious level. They don't, realize what's going on. You don't realize what's going on. It's just happening. And, and those types of things, verbal abuse, usually they pass a lot quicker than, if you actually were beaten. So it's easier for those to just become so normal. And, and I'll give it an example of this. I haven't watched the documentary of this kid that was murdered by his parents. His name was Gabriel Fernandez. I don't want to go into the story of what happened to him, because it's really ugly, but if you want, you can look it up. But my sister-in-law was watching the documentary, and I just was making something in the kitchen, so I was hearing it, but I don't want to see it. But they were interviewing one of the relatives of the boy who supposedly, had him for a while, and he was talking about how the mom had called him and said, oh, come over here and come pick up your kid. He's already getting on my damn nerves. Like, she was basically saying, that she didn't want him, that he was getting on her nerves. And the relative started laughing, because he thought it was funny, I guess, reminiscing about it. And that really upset me. And I actually said out loud, you know, that's not fucking funny, you dumb fucking piece of shit. Because it's not. Like, you know, if you have family that's like that, that's, you know, talks about their kids like that and treats them like that, and you're just, you know, you laugh about it just because you don't know how else to deal with it, and that's just how it has been in your family, you know, you're also an accomplice to that, because you're not setting boundaries within their minds as far as like what is okay. And you know, you're making it seem like it's okay for that type of talk, and it's not. You know, I mean, what happened eventually was it got to the point where she mistreated him so bad that he died. And now she's in jail, and her husband, I think he's on death row. um so it's not funny, you know, like, it's not funny to me. And people, the whole thing that triggered me, or brought up this conversation, was a stupid YouTube video. It was a video of a dog that was basically snapping at her puppies because they were trying to drink milk from her a little too aggressively. And she was obviously getting hurt by their bites, so she snapped at him and bit one in the face. And she was just so angry that she was even getting mad at the wrong ones that were like coming up to her, because they were all around her. And but eventually the puppies were just like so afraid of how she was reacting that they just submitted, you know. And there were so many people that were like praising her behavior as a mother, and saying, you know, that, oh, that most humans could do well from learning from how to parent their kids from this dog. And I was just, it just brought me back to all of that, you know, of how people are just so, they're just so used to it, and just so, it's just so part of their upbringing that they don't see that it's wrong. And you know, like, I'm not, the animals are different from humans, like they can't communicate in the same way that we do. So it's an animal. I'm not saying that it's wrong necessarily, but like I told one guy on the thread that I was talking to, I have seen other dogs treat their pups better than that. When they were behaving in the same fashion, they were coming at her hard, biting her too hard, and all she would do was just stand up, like shake them off, and walk away somewhere else. And she just kept doing that and doing that until finally they were just calm enough to where they weren't as you know, frantic as the first time, you know, that they were trying to drink. And she would let them, you know, that's how she dealt with their high energy. She didn't get mad, and she didn't snap at them, you know. She had another method. And that's my point that I'm just trying to make to all these people, is that there's other ways to do things. You don't have to, you know, like snap at your kids. You don't have to hit them. You don't have to bark at them. And I know it's hard not to do that sometimes, because you know, we're stressed out. We have all these other worries, life worries we have to worry about. You know, we don't really want to be dealing with the seemingly insignificant little squabbles that our kids are throwing at us, the little dramas and dilemmas that seem like nothing, that they want us to engage in and be a part of. Like, it seems like too much for us to deal with. And you know, it is, you know, I'm not saying that I'm a perfect parent. Like I've said several times to the people there as well, I have issues with my child, as far as like my stress levels, and trying to, you know, contain them and control them, so that I don't allow my stress to become the you know, mitigating factor in how I'm gonna react to my child and how I'm gonna parent her. I don't have all the answers as far as that. I'm learning as I go, but I see when I'm doing, you know, when I'm parenting, if I'm more stressful, and you know, I'm more reacting more angrily, and more strict, and less, you know, attentive, and less understanding to her, that it gets a lot harder to deal with, you know, everything. So I'm just trying to figure out how to keep my stress level. That's the key so far that I've experienced, is just controlling my stress levels and my mind. Once you start having those thoughts in your head where you're just like, oh, these kids are getting annoying, they're getting, they're getting super out of hand, like, oh, I just want to leave from here. When you start having thoughts like that, that's when it's like, it's the most critical point where you have to really, like, you know take yourself back into your head and start, going into your mind and your emotions and asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Why is this getting me so wrapped up? And what is the deal? Because really it is your problem too. It's not just your kid. It's what's going on within yourself, and all the traumas and all the hurt that you've had, that you experienced growing up. Usually a lot of the times what's happening is you're having flashbacks to when you were a child and how you were treated when you were behaving the same way as your child. And you're having thoughts of how you want to react, and you jump to how your parents were because it worked at the time for you, but you forget how you felt as a child. You don't remember the things that you felt when you were experiencing that from the child's perspective. You're just blanked off to that. Me, I'm not, because I take myself there. I mean, sometimes I'm not gonna say I never do, where I'm just like blocking it all off because I just don't want to deal with it. But most of the time, like, I take myself back there and I start, thinking, what else could I do, or what did I wish my parents would have done? Like, I start analyzing my thoughts, and I go from there. So so basically, abuse is in all kinds of different forms, not just physical but verbal. People think that words aren't powerful, but they are, especially when the words are coming from the very people that you love the most, that are supposed to protect you and shape you into the human that you're supposed to be in this world. If their words are not, in a more positive nature, and they're mostly just all negativity, and you're being shaped by that type of, upbringing, then chances are you're gonna turn out that way, and you're gonna impose that on your children. And this is what we call generational curses of abuse. And that's something that, if we were actually able to overcome, that the world would basically shape into something completely different from what we have now. So just listen to your kids and stop being so offended by them when they're acting like crazy little kids. I mean, they're kids. Let them burn out energy, and just try and find a way in which they can do it in as less of a stressful manner for you to deal with. And you'll find a balance with them, so you can go on as peacefully as you can. So yeah, that's my point, basically. I'm not saying don't discipline your kids and let them do whatever the fuck they want to do. That's not what I'm fucking saying, morons.